If you're anything like most people, chances are you like to feel safe. I know there are some people out there in the world who get a thrill from putting themselves in danger, or even can't feel alive at all unless they place themselves in some kind of serious situation. Most of us, though, I think, prefer to spend most of their time with the general sense that they don't stand to die at any moment. Now, obviously, anybody who puts their mind to it can easily realize that no matter what precautions they take, they most certainly can die at any moment, whether they like it or not. What we're actually doing is taking precautions to give ourselves the illusion that we have some ability to prevent our sudden and untimely death by taking passive measures to counteract some of the more extreme forms such a death might come in. One of these forms is, of course, the old standby, the intentional manual life ending by another human. Bonus points if he's doing it through some motivation related to the prolonging of his own life. For many people, the obvious answer to this problem is to rely upon the local constabulary. Though in some circles the police have somewhat fallen out of favor in the last year or so, I've noticed that many people who have some disdain for what they call 12 have not done much to replace them in their lives. Allow me to present what I've always thought of as truly the neatest little solution. Get a gun. Absurdly simple to use, eminently practical, portable, and in many cases quite fatally efficient. A gun can easily take the guesswork out of placing calls to the constables and deciding whether they will arrive in time to secure your skin, or perhaps even arrive just in time to be the ones who dispatch you instead of your original attacker. Yes, if you want to protect yourself from a violent death at the hands of another human being, look no further than a traditional firearm for an even playing field against all but the most wealthy or determined opponents. Many people do not like guns, and often present alternatives to me. Knives, they argue, will do the job and do it quietly. I dislike the humble knife, for though it is much cheaper and easier to use, it leaves much to be desired should my attacker possess a ranged weapon of any sort. Tasers are sometimes suggested, or stun guns, or similar less than lethal options. I think anybody who makes such a suggestion has never operated one of these devices and seen just how easy it is to make a single mistake and then render oneself vulnerable. The stun baton opens one up naturally to the same range problems faced by wielding a knife. Next comes the person who will invariably offer the bow or crossbow. This is a worse option to me than all the others before it for a few reasons. First, it is wildly impractical. It takes up much more space than a gun, and so do the projectiles it fires. Like with the taser, I don't think anybody who suggests the crossbow has ever had the string on one drawn. Or at least they haven't had to draw one that has a substantial strength. In fact, in many cases I doubt they're even capable of it. Well, if they are, then I wish them all the best in their endeavors to silently skewer any stealthy intruders to their home. For me, though, the genuine article can only be a firearm. I was 17 years old when I was really attacked for the first time. I've been punched in the head by other kids so hard that my pants fell down, and I've been in my fair share of harmless scuffles between other poor kids and myself, like a lot of people my age. This was different. A person came after me with a blunt instrument, and I believe they were determined to hit me with it until I stopped moving. The only motivation I can think of for what happened to me that night was that this person watched me kissing another boy. I admit that I did so on a stage in front of many people. Although I am a bisexual, I didn't really think of it as a sexual thing I was doing. It was more like something Bugs Bunny would do, this sort of gauche homoerotic humor. A boy had been blindfolded, and a number of girls would come up and do different things to him, and he would have to guess who they were. Obviously, when he felt my wispy teenager beard on his face, he tore the blindfold off and everybody had a good laugh. I would have expected this kid to be the one who would attack me, but he actually went home with his mother not long after. In fact, there were only a few of us left when I finally made my farewells and stepped outside. It was late at night in the high school parking lot. The only lights to speak of were a pair of amber mercury lights on another face of the school. I heard a sound behind me while I had the door of my car open and reached in to grab the flashlight I kept wedged between my seats. The noise grew louder and I bumped my head, straightening up the moment I realized it was the sound of somebody running towards me. My back lit up with a sudden pounding, stabbing pain as I took the first blow from what felt like a lead pipe in my attacker's hand. He hit me again, and I fell forward into the car, still holding my flashlight. I heard him say something punctuated by the word faggot at this point, which supports my theory that he was motivated by distress at seeing me kiss another male, but to be frank, I've used that word to refer to people I find weak-willed or picky, regardless of their sexuality, and I wouldn't be surprised if others do as well. That said, a man liking other men isn't a bad quality to me, so maybe I just want the word, if it's going to be an insult, to actually mean something insulting. The next time he hit me, the end of the pipe cut a shallow gash into the back of my neck, and at the same time I was pushing on the A and B pillars of my car to get upright. With my flashlight held in my right hand, it was clacking against the B pillar. I took one more hit, this time a weak glancing blow on the left side of my neck, before I was finally able to turn around and strike back. It wasn't with martial prowess that I struck, but rather a 3-cell maglite. I waved the cool metal tube in my hand with all the grace of a pig defecating into his own trough by mistake, but I felt ringing in my wrist as my weapon struck home. I couldn't say how many times I hit my assailant or where I hit him, only that at some point during the assault he ran away. There was blood on the bottom of my flashlight, but a good bit had run down the back of my neck and my arms, so it may very well have been mine. The bulb was also broken after that, but the light worked again once I'd painstakingly used a pair of needle-nose pliers to remove the bent and shattered remains of the old one to replace it with a new one. I can only guess that I won that little fight, though to this day I really don't know who did it or why they did it, or if I even really did more than just annoy them in the act of committing their would-be hate crime. What I took away from the event more than anything was that I was ill-prepared and ill-equipped for any future attempts, many of which may very well have been carried out by more competent villains than the lowly rogue I merely waylaid with a maglite. I didn't resolve to immediately get a gun, though the option was definitely in the top of my considerations. I considered things like military service, change of residence, martial arts courses, hiding my sexuality, and never traveling alone. I even tried some of those things over the next few years. By the time I was done with it all, there was nothing to me that felt more secure than the certainty of heavy steel. It wasn't long after my 21st birthday that I purchased my first handgun, a Ruger Security 6 chambered in .357 Magnum. I still have and occasionally carry that weapon to this day, even though my collection has since expanded to include many others. At the height of last year's civil unrest, there was a period where at one point I even had a loaded firearm in each room of the house. Many people on the left tell me that all gun owners are God-fearing white nationalists, and that my decision to turn to firearms is folly, because no one in the gun community will ever accept me due to my unorthodox personality and my sexuality. It is ironic to me how wrong they are, because in their ignorance they make themselves into the thing they accuse their political opponents of being. When it comes to compartments of the American right wing, I think many people are much more tolerant than people on the left give them credit for. Long ago were the days where every Republican openly scorned anybody who wasn't just like them in every way, and sure, there are those, numbered among them, who steadfastly reject anything that isn't in line with the 1950s Americana perception of traditional Protestant values. To me, though, there are far more people on the left who have begun to immediately reject anybody who isn't just like them. Meanwhile, the conservatives seem to be more and more forgiving. Homosexuality, they tolerate. Women doing masculine things, they venerate. Blacks and Latinos, well, turned out a lot of them were fellow conservatives all along. All of their old prejudices have eroded in many cases to be replaced by the much more nebulous and easy-to-dislike snowflake. The gun community in particular has been, in my experience, one of the first segments to make this move. Without fail, every time I have seen a new person attempting to enter the community, there has been an outpouring of information, an overabundance of unsolicited advice, and a genuinely grateful sense of accommodation to any safe and responsible shooter stepping up to the bench for the first time. I have seen withered old fuds happily talking the ears off of trans women about why they hunt with straight-walled cartridges, and I have seen obviously gay men practicing at the range with purple-framed Ruger LCPs and Tiffany blue airweight Ladysmith revolvers. Nobody attacks them, possibly because they all have guns, and nobody protests their presence. There are organizations like the Pink Pistols and Operation Blazing Sword who have in their membership people from every flavor of sexuality along the many-splendored Skittle spectrum. Each and every one of them like the way a gun makes them feel safe. I see many Latinos and Latinas, now people are calling them something else I like to intentionally mispronounce as Latinxes, because that's fun to say, practicing at the free ranges provided by the Department of Natural Resources in this state. I regularly talk with a gay trucker who asks me for recommendations on what gun he should buy for his truck, and I am friends with a trans woman who is possibly the best and fastest shooter I have ever known. Still, I will occasionally hear that old line from people on the left: gun owners are right-wing nut jobs. Another thing I hear mentioned a lot is the good old standard: the AR-15 is an assault weapon, a weapon of war on our streets. It seems like every time I hear something like this, it's from the perspective of somebody who has never held one, never shot one, and doesn't know anything about them other than regurgitated facts from similarly ignorant journalists who, like them, have watched too many movies. I've often heard something said by people on the left when it comes to legislators making abortion bills and healthcare bills about access to birth control. Many of these legislators are often depicted as pompously writing laws about women's bodies when they're old white men who couldn't be more ignorant of what it's like to be a woman. I think that's true. And I think it's also remarkably similar to how most gun control advocates write laws based on their imagination of what guns are like and how they work, rather than any practical knowledge or experience. Of course, I understand that to some people it's a matter of trust. They just can't trust that another person won't get a gun and drive to their house and shoot them in the middle of the night. No gun control law is going to prevent that, of course. People make shotguns in their garages out of pipes they bought from Home Depot. Now, you can make fatal weapons by grinding up some sparky black rocks into a clay pot or mixing styrofoam coffee cups with gasoline from the local filling station. I can't imagine how alarming it must be for someone to live in constant fear of gun owners like me and our harder-working, much more entrepreneurial analogs in the improvised explosives world, because the truth is that anybody in either of those communities could really walk into your home in the middle of the night and kill you at any time, just like any other human being. My only recommendation for people in such a position is that they do what I do. Get a gun.